What's going on, folks? Welcome to another episode of Out of Right Field with JP. I'm your host, JP. And before we get into today's episode, I would just like to ask you guys to please like and subscribe down below if you haven't already. I would greatly appreciate that. And then also, I have an X account, and if you guys would like to go follow me there, I'd greatly appreciate that, as well as at JP Rightside. I'm going to provide a link down below in the description with a link to that if you guys would like to go click that and then go follow me. I would greatly appreciate it. In today's episode of Out of Right Field, we're going to be talking about the main lesson that I think the NHL taught the NBA with this Four Nations Face-Off tournament, and how the NBA can fix their dying product moving forward. But then also, there's a sleeper candidate in the Democratic Party for this upcoming 2028 presidential election, and it will probably shock you, so stay tuned for that. Well, the Four Nations Face-Off, the hockey tournament between Finland, Sweden, the U.S., and Canada, took the sports world by storm because it was the first ever Four Nations Face-Off, and it did not disappoint. We saw two matchups of the U.S. versus Canada. The first one had great animosity with the Montreal crowd booing the U.S. anthem, and then had three fights within the first 9 minutes of the first game. And then we got a rematch in the championship game in Boston, where Canada ended up winning in overtime and winning the first ever Four Nations face-off. But there were a lot of lessons to be learned from this inaugural tournament, because this was during the break, so-called, during the NHL season, where the players were supposed to take it easy, lay low, chill out. You got a week-long break before the grind continues again. But yet, we saw a bunch of NHL players take the opportunity to go and play even more hockey. As a matter of fact, play, quote, exhibition games, but played like their life depended on it. They cared tremendously about winning that tournament, and it showed. It almost seemed like they cared more about winning that than winning the Stanley Cup. I mean, they played just that hard. The energy was there. The tension was there between the U.S. and Canada in both games. It meant a lot, and you could tell that it meant a lot. Now, obviously, the political turmoil between Trump and Trudeau played a lot into that during the game, and with the crowd booing the anthem. Obviously, all of that added to the tension within the game itself. I'm not denying that. However, I think this showed one thing. The players in this tournament care about the game, and they care about the product that they're putting out every time they step out on the ice, and that was evident. Because if they didn't care, and, this was just a fun little thing to do during my little break in the season, well, first of all, if they didn't care, they wouldn't be playing in this tournament at all. They would take this opportunity to go chill out and take their break in the season. But yet, they used their, quote, break to go and play more hockey, and they put on a product that did not disappoint. So this showed, like I said, they care about the sport, they care about the product, and anytime they step out on the ice, they're going to give it their all. Look on the flip side of things. We had the NBA All-Star break, and the NBA continues to just kill itself in the ratings. The ratings continue to plummet, and NBA folks are wondering why that is. Why is it that nobody wants to watch our product anymore? Look at the NBA All-Star weekend, where we saw a crap product, and we've seen a crap product out of that weekend for years now. Guys do not care. Adam Silver has been desperately trying to find a way to get the guys to care about the All-Star game and to give some effort, literally any effort at all. And we see guys not wanting to participate in the dunk contests anymore. They don't want to give any effort during the whole weekend. It showed one thing. They obviously do not care about the product that they're putting out to fans. They could care less. NBA players are extremely overpaid. They get to go throughout the season and take so many breaks, quote, injury breaks. You turn on the TV, there's a good chance that the star player for whatever team you're watching at that time is not going to be playing in that game for whatever reason at all. It is a joke. Maybe star players can play half the season, if that. Now, obviously, not every star player. I'm being a bit facetious, but the trend of players taking breaks during the season, workload breaks, whatever you want to call it, it's embarrassing. And that's why the product continues to die, because the players don't care, so why should the fans care? You know, that's a great saying. If you don't care, then I don't care. Well, that you see that in the NBA. The players obviously don't care about putting on a good product for you, the fan, the customer. So the customer doesn't care anymore. And they're going to go shift their focus to the NHL, where the players actually care, and they care about the product they're putting out. Now, the NBA has also kowtowed to liberal ideologies and woke agendas for quite some time. You saw the disaster during the BLM period in 2020 with all the players kneeling for the anthem, and it's a joke. Clearly, fans do not like that, and the country gave a mandate within this last election where Trump won the popular vote and won every single swing state. The nation is tired of the woke and is tired of liberal ideologies being shoved down their throat nonstop. So I think that also plays into the fact of fans don't want to hear that crap when they turn on the game. They want to watch a game. They don't want to hear about politics. They don't want to hear about your agendas. They want to turn on the TV and watch their favorite players, the star players, actually playing in the game and enjoy, their time off. This is time where they get off of work and they want to just chill and relax and watch some basketball. They don't want to hear about your politics on TV. That's it. So I think those two things played a critical role in the sharp decline in NBA ratings. Now, we saw with the Olympics this last year what worked so well for the NHL and the four nations face-off. We saw that in the Olympics. We saw LeBron. We saw Curry. We saw KD. We saw all of the top players from this generation deciding to take part in the Olympics and go for gold. And it was awesome. I loved it. It was awesome to see that. But yet, it didn't translate to All-Star Weekend or the NBA season as a whole, and nobody really cared. But if the NBA can replicate somehow what we saw during the Olympics, not like throughout the whole season, the ratings will go up tremendously. I guarantee you that. You see guys start to care. You see effort and energy being put into a game on a night in, night out basis. Obviously, we're going to have injuries that are going to happen and guys are going to have to sit, but you shouldn't be sitting around like half of the season if you're a star player. You just shouldn't. For the most cases, people should not be doing that. Players should not be doing that. So if they can replicate somehow what we saw in the Olympics of that sort of care, that's exactly what we saw in hockey this past week, and that's exactly why the Four Nations face-off completely decimated the All-Star Weekend in ratings. But also, we're seeing ESPN turn this into a race issue because they suck, and they always do this. Here's Molly Querum talking about the fact that people wanted to watch the Four Nations face-off over the All-Star Weekend, of course, because you're racist.
It's just interesting to me that certain sports you're allowed to fight and other sports could never happen.
And by the way,
optics!
In international competition over the last 50 years, they've had a total of 5 fights. USA and Canada, they had 3 and 9 seconds on Saturday night. That drove me crazy. All right, number 2.
Just a little hypocrisy.
All right, number 2. This is a big...
So there's 2 things from that. First off, fighting is culturally just a part of the game in hockey, right? Like, it's literally a part of the game. It's always been a part of the game. You're not going to change that. You're always going to have guys fighting, and it's going to be something fans love to see. She's trying to say that because the guys were white and they were fighting, it would be different if it was NBA players, black NBA players, and they were fighting. Then it wouldn't be okay. I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know any people that love a hockey fight that don't love a fight in general. Most people, when they see a fight on an NBA court, are going, yes, they love to see it. It doesn't matter if they're black or they're white, okay? So stop turning this into a race issue. Stop saying that the ratings were great because, hockey's a predominantly white sport and the NBA is a predominantly black sport, and that's why the hockey did so much better over the weekend. That's just completely false. It's bullcrap. It's an awful narrative. The real reason why we saw such a discrepancy in the ratings is because of effort and care for the product that we put out there. And that is it. As a matter of fact, PK Subban, who is a former hockey player himself, talked about this greatly, and I'm just going to end off with this because I think he put it tremendously here.
In terms of the money, you're probably right. There is a lot of money. But once again, I ask the question, what are you playing for? Like, if you're really about it, if you're really about sports, then you're about 2 things. Your teammates and the fans. And I'm sorry, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. When you do not show up to play, you're letting your teammates down. When you do not show up to play, you're letting the fans down that are paying you 40, 50, 60 million. I don't care if you're getting 300 million. Congratulations. But these people in here are paying $2,500 a ticket, $5,000, that are blue-collared, hard-working people. If you don't get your head wrapped around that, you shouldn't be in pro sports.
I think he nailed it right on the head, and called out all of the NBA players for the crap product that they're continuing to put out week in and week out. And if the NBA wants to see the ratings get any better, it's not going to be one-on-one tournaments in the All-Star break instead of an actual game. It's not going to be, U.S. versus Canada and the All-Star. I mean, that may do a little bit better, or the U.S. versus the world, I should say, not U.S. versus Canada. That may do a little better, but bottom line is, get your guys to care about the product, and the fans will start to care. Because like I said, the saying of, if you don't care, then I don't care, that's exactly what we're seeing. And if the players don't care, the fans aren't going to show out. And they need to stop putting politics into the sport and get the guys to somehow care more, right? We saw workload fines or some rules that were implemented that started to get some guys to start to play more, and the trend maybe got a little bit better over the last couple of years of guys not sitting out as much, but still, as a whole, I mean, the All-Star weekend is a joke. The NBA overall is a joke, and if the NBA wants to get any better, they're going to have to make some sharp changes. And the NHL gave them a perfect lesson with how they destroyed them in the ratings. The NBA should shift more to that. Shift more to what we saw in the Four Nations face-off if they want to see things get any better. Well, staying in the line of NBA, there's an interesting story, and to be honest with you, I've seen this story over the last couple of months. Didn't really think much of it, thought it was kind of a joke, but now it's starting to pick up a little bit of steam again. Stephen A. Smith is starting to rear his head in politics and starting to more and more express his disappointment in the Democratic Party and how he would like to help fix it. Now, he said how he doesn't think he's going to run. He's not interested in politics. But over time, he's still flirting with it. He knows how to keep his name in the news headlines. I mean, this is a guy that's very controversial, very brash. There's a reason that he is as successful as he is as an analyst, because he knows how to spin the narrative. He knows how to get eyes watching him. So this is exactly what he's doing right now with this potential presidential run. But James Carville, who is a Democrat, did not mince words talking about Stephen A. Smith and his potential presidential run. Here's what he had to say about that.
When it comes to politics, he don't know his from a hole in the ground. He's on that running his mouth about how he may have to run as a Democrat because there's nothing left of the Democratic Party. There's no talent. Stephen A., you me? I mean, you say you're friends with Wes Moore and you say you're friends with Josh Shapiro. I'm friends with both of them. I think they're really extraordinary, talented people. I got news for you, dude. There's 6 or 7 other people in the Democratic Party that are just that talented. So before you start running your mouth off about politics, a topic of which you really don't know anything about, you ought to sit back and think about it and call some people and run it by them.
In a very colorful fashion, per usual with James Carville, he expressed his extreme dislike for potential Stephen A. Smith candidacy for president. But I will say this, though. The Democratic Party has reaped what it sowed with this last election. We saw Donald Trump win in a very convincing landslide victory where he won the popular vote, the first president to win the popular vote, I think since Reagan, maybe. It's been a long, long time. So very, very impressive victory, and that is just a result of the establishment continuing to dictate things within the Democratic Party. And, the Republican Party had, some sort of a revolution within its own party with Donald Trump, flipping the party as a whole and getting rid of the Republican establishment. We still have, some sticking around like Mitch McConnell and such, although he's on the way out, thank God. But the Democratic Party needs to have some sort of revolution within its own party to self-correct, come back to the middle. It's gone so far into its radical left extreme spectrum of the party. It's losing the middle ground. It's losing the moderate vote. It's going so far into the trans ideology, into the LGBTQIA++++ ideology that it's losing the moderate vote. And the moderate voters are going to the Republican Party. You see guys like RFK, you see people like Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk, just to name a few. Former Democrats, the party has gone so far to that end and to that extreme that they're coming to the Republican Party. And if the Democrats want to win any election going forward at all, they're going to have to make a shift, and they're going to have to come back to the middle. They're going to have to self-correct, unless, all the moderate voters are going to be gone. But Stephen A. appears to be maybe the guy that can stir that revolution. Him and Donald Trump share a lot of similar characteristics. They're very brash. They're a showman type. They know how to get all eyes on him and how to get people talking about him. And like I said, he knows he's been in this business and he's been a successful analyst in the sports world for so long. It's not for nothing. He knows how to be successful in terms of getting people to get all eyes on him. So even if he doesn't run, maybe just him flirting with running and getting people talking about him running can cause things to change within the Democratic Party. He's talked about how he would be more of a centrist-leaning left. He's talked about his border policies, his national security policies. But here's a clip of Stephen A. actually talking about what his policies would be if he decided to run for president in 2028.
I doubt I'll ever run. It's not me. I live a pretty good life, and I don't want to ruin it by getting involved in politics. But I got to tell y'all something. The Democratic Party looks so pathetic after this election. I might entertain running. I just might change my mind one day. I doubt it, but I might. It's just about people feeling safe in the streets. We've had immigrants in our country forever. Immigrants helped build this country. That's why, for the most part, we've been proponents of folks coming across our borders. We just didn't want flagrantly open borders like President Joe Biden authenticated or okayed.
He said it perfectly. The reason that all eyes are on him and why his name is in the headlines right now is because the Democratic Party sucks and it's in turmoil, and people want change. Democratic voters want change, because if there's no change, we're going to see the Republicans sweep elections from here on out, unless there's radical change within the Democratic Party. And unless they come back to the center, we're going to see more of the same that we saw in this last election. But Stephen A. talking about his border policies, national security, pro-free speech. He's sort of like an old school Democrat, is what I would call him as. Like the Democrats that used to agree with Republicans on immigration for the most part, and national security and free speech, but maybe some minor differences on the economy and abortion. Democrats nowadays are so radical, people like Stephen A. Smith will be called a right-winger, even though he is clearly not. He's clearly not a right-winger. He's just a Democrat with some common sense. So, like I said, even if Stephen A. Smith doesn't decide to run himself, maybe he will cause a stir within the party and cause Democrats to look in the mirror a little bit. But here's an interesting poll, though. This poll was done by McLaughlin. This was on January 27th, so about a month ago. Stephen A. Smith is polling at 2%. 2%. He hasn't even declared his run for presidency yet, and he's already at 2%. Just for reference, Waltz is 3%. Shapiro is at 3%. And then AOC, who a lot of people think she would do great as a presidential nominee for the Democratic Party in 2028, is at 6%. So Stephen A. Smith, before even declaring a presidential run officially, just simply flirting with the idea of it and talking about it, is already at 2%. That right there should scare Democrats, because what does that mean? Democrats want change. They're tired of the same old, same old. And if it takes a guy like Stephen A. Smith to come in and change things completely for your party to self-correct, then, so be it. Maybe that's the case. But guys like Shapiro, who would have been a great presidential candidate, by the way, even a VP candidate, he would have been great at that. But, he is a Jew, and Democrats, the Democrat Party hates Jews now. So we can't have a Jewish guy running for any sort of Democratic, or any sort of office on the Democrat side, because that's just way too far. That's right wing. We hate Jews in our party now. The Democratic Party does. So that he does pose that problem. So anyways, he's more of a moderate guy. And a guy like Shapiro, if the Democrats weren't so anti-Semitic, he would have been a great candidate. He would have brought the party back to center. But as we see, the party thought Kamala Harris was the way to go. And, she kowtowed to the far end of the party and the liberals. So you reap what you sowed. That's exactly what you get if you go too far to the end of your, too far to the extreme of your party. So Man, Stephen A. Smith, he knows how to be in the headlines. He knows how to play. He knows how to play the narrative, and that's exactly what we're seeing now. Will Stephen A. Smith run for president? Right now, I'm saying no. However, people like James Carville, who are flipping out about it and getting very angry about it, maybe James Carville knows something behind the scenes that we don't. Maybe there's actually something to this, but we'll see. But there's one thing for sure: Stephen A. Smith will continue to flirt with it. We'll continue to talk about it because it'll get all eyes on him, and maybe it'll change. Maybe it'll cause some worry within the Democratic Party and cause them to change. But a Stephen A. Shaq card or a Stephen A. Smith Charles Barkley ticket. Who knows? Maybe that'll do better than some people will think. But as of now, I think this is just a fun conversation that underlines some issues within the party. Just simply talking about it. So hopefully the Democrats will look within the mirror and come back to the center on things. Unless they're not going to win an election moving forward, which I guess is fine by me. But if they want to win an election at all moving forward, maybe they need to take a page out of Stephen A's book. But folks, appreciate you tuning in to this episode of Out of Right Field with JP, sports through a conservative lens. Until next time, see you then.